Let's see how SQL Server accepts connection from client applications. Here we have a desktop computer which will try to connect to SQL Server. It's pretty straightforward. The connection goes through TCP/IP, and the default instance accepts connection from the TCP port 1433. So there is nothing else to take into account. Simply the client application, the client library tries to connect to a server by its server name or IP address on its 1433 TCP port. If SQL Server is installed as a default instance, it will answer to this port, and that's it. But what about a named instance? You can install a named instance on a server which already has a default instance, or you can install many named instances. So of course, each of them has to listen to another TCP port, not the 1433, which is already used here by our default instance. So how can we reach it? Simply, we need the SQL Server browser, which is another service installed with SQL Server. This SQL Server browser has a few usages. One is simply to advertise to client application what is the named instance port here, what is the dynamic port used by the named instance. When a named instance starts on a server, it will store its dynamic port, the port chosen at startup, on the registry of the server, and the SQL Server browser will read this entry in the registry and know what port this named instance is listening to. But the next question is, how does the client connect to SQL Server browser? It connects to the browser through the UDP 1434 port. Then the browser answers to the client with the TCP port used by the named instance, and then the client can connect directly to the named instance by its TCP dynamic port.